Randomly with Ronnie Jr.
All right, Rich Davis, how are you, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
So Sirius XM, I feel like your run there, such a good experience. 15 plus years now, am I right?
15 plus years, which is insane. When you think about it, 2004, end of '04 seems like forever ago, because it sort of is forever ago.
Like 20 years, yeah.
Yeah, like I heard the new insult from a young girl is, "Oh my God, you were born in the 1900s?" Because when you think about it, anyone born in 2000 or later could be 20 years old, which is insane. So '04, it's been quite a run.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, that's well, then I'm getting up there.
Yeah, exactly.
I, of course, love radio. You and I have talked about radio on a number of occasions, and being involved in the Covino and Rich show has been such a cool experience for me to watch. But you guys have not just done that. Like, you've catapulted to television as well. Tell me about what you do at ESPN2. I don't know much about the sports. I know some stuff, mostly when I grew up. It was a very UCLA household, a very Dodger household, Laker household, as you could imagine. But tell me about the dynamic of taking the Covino and Rich show, which does so well on SiriusXM, many different incarnations of the show and different channels on the network, and then taking that to television. Were you ready for that? Had you done television before?
Yeah, what's crazy about that is Covino and I have a chemistry. So that's like step one, but it's like a major step, because a lot of times, whether it's a sports network or a news network, pop culture, anything, people love to harp on chemistry, right? And when you have chemistry, the other stuff, they almost feel like they can fill in the blanks. Now, Covino and I know sports, but what we know more than sports is how to work together. So that was step one. So ESPN sort of liked what we did. And the fact that we just know enough about sports, and we're sports fans, we're not sports experts. Covino aren't the guys, we're not the guys that are breaking down every stat and all that. But, we are big sports fans, and we love the pop culture that goes along with sports. And I feel like they thought there's a window for that, because when you think about it, a lot of sports fans are like that,
I think you guys were very early on with ESPN2, because, of course, been following your guys' career for a little while. I've done more projects with Covino just because I've worked in programs like Latin Nation, American Latino TV. So we always got to talk with him. We didn't really get to talk with you, so this is exciting. And you're right. That is, I'm glad the ESPN2 thing, now or never, is such a good thing for you two, because it is that. Like, sports is analytical if that's what you want to grab. But a lot of times you just want to grab, like, okay, I'll put it to you like this. You watch a NBA All-Star weekend. I mean, those events are so fun, and I feel like that is the moment that we realized as consumers that sports goes to fashion, it goes to trash.
Of course. Listen, I have friends that work in the fashion industry in New York that flew out for NBA All-Star Weekend, because it's about style, it's about fashion. Every sport, like in the world of football, one of the more recent stories, Rob Gronkowski, Gronk comes out of retirement and he's with Brady again. Yeah, there's football that you could break down, but I just think it's hilarious, the story that, they're both sort of screwing over Bill Belichick in New England, and there's the drama that, Gronk is now back, and he only came back if he could be with Brady. Like, there's so many fun stories, and the memes and the social media that comes out of that. That, to me, is the fun of it,
Well, yeah. I mean, and Gronk was a masked singer, so what do you do after the masked singer? You got to take it to the next level. Can you tell me about how much radio was a passion of yours? Because before you got with SiriusXM, I feel like it was such a cool time. I believe it was in the vein of when Howard came to Sirius, right? Yeah. But even before that, you did terrestrial radio. That's where I started my career also in 2002, was terrestrial radio. Talk about the difference between cutting your teeth in the radio industry and then what SiriusXM did for you guys.
Yeah. So I got to be honest, I had like a really lucky break, and that sort of paved the way. And a lot of times, people can say, oh, you're lucky. If you're prepared when you're lucky, that's when I think good things could happen, right? So I was really working hard when I was like 20, 21 years old, and I had an opportunity to work at Z100, which is the biggest top 40 pop station in the country. It's unheard of. I probably didn't belong there, but I took the opportunity, and I worked my butt off. And I just remember thinking, like, all right, well, what am I going to do after this? Because if this doesn't last forever, is there no direction to go but backwards? And I was dead set on, this has to be a step towards bigger things, because you can't start at the top pop station and then be like, go backwards. So I enjoyed working in Top 40 Radio, and that was the time of NSYNC and Britney and the Backstreet Boys. So it was a great time to be in that format, in that world. And you know what? I got to give Covino credit, because when we first met, we would always talk about relationships, life, all that stuff. And Covino was the guy that almost had to give me a little nudge and say, hey, man, I'm telling you, there's something here that we could turn into talk radio, something special. And it was just the next step. It really was. It was the step from, all right, talking in between songs on a music radio station to actually having real long conversations. It seemed like the right progression.
And your conversations, you guys weren't working at the same radio station. You just knew each other through the same circle, like
it's like every industry is small world. So, Covino was working at K-Rock, the rock station. I was at the pop station. We'd bump into each other through mutual friends. Believe it or not, we'd gone to the same auditions for the same stuff, like Who Wants to Be an MTV VJ, stuff like that. So Covino and I would see each other in the same circle. But when we sort of got to know each other, we're very different, yet very similar. And we just thought we could balance each other out. And
when I watch you guys, I think of like best friends that I have that aren't necessarily anything like me. Like if you check all my boxes versus checking theirs, it's like two different walks of life, but that counterbalance is really important in a friendship and obviously in radio. Was there any trepidation? It sounds like maybe no, coming from terrestrial radio, because like right now, everyone's really cool with podcasting. Yep. Everyone's really cool with, Sirius or anywhere you put out your content. But there was a time, at least I remember, because I was working at Clear Channel in Los Angeles around this time, and it was at Hot 92 and Kiss FM, same building. Radio still held a lot of weight, regular terrestrial radio. Any trepidation going to Sirius XM, or did it?
Without a doubt, man, without a doubt, because I left. I say left like it was my choice. I got let go from Clear Channel.
Your time was up.
They were just, nothing I did wrong. It's not like I slept with someone or did something dumb. I just, they were changing direction, and they brought in some new on-air talent. They were considerate enough to say, hey, listen, we're going in a different direction, so we're not going to renew your contracts in a few months. So I knew it was time to go. And I had looked at Boston, Miami, Houston. I was contemplating moving to other cities to do FM radio, terrestrial radio. And I got the opportunity through, one of my mentors, Kid Kelly, to come to Sirius XM. And trust me, be careful what you mock and what you think is not there yet, right? Because I remember thinking this satellite radio could turn into something, right? Mm-hmm. The same way someone a couple years ago might have said podcast. Who cares about a podcast? People listen to podcasts now, right? People are scared of the unknown. And at the time, everyone's like, satellite radio, that's career suicide. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, you can look at it that way. People mocked it. And now all the people that mocked it wish probably that they would have believed in it or tried to get in then, because all the people that mocked it back then are out of jobs. It stinks.
Was that the time that Howard was already at Sirius, or right after?
No, Howard had not jumped ship yet. Howard came in the beginning of 2006, right, officially. Okay. He made the announcement like a year before that. But at the time, 2004, 2005, people were like, what are you doing? You're on satellite radio? Like, what are you doing there? Because it really was, honestly, it went from the joke to realizing you get paid more, and it is like a stable platform compared to terrestrial radio. There was a big switch, and that's why I'll never insult or mock anyone doing something in the new technology realm, because it could very well be the next thing. And at that time, no one thought satellite radio was going to compete, let alone be more effective than terrestrial.
They have some top tier talent, that's for sure. I mean, Sirius has the merge or whatever with XM, but it's still nonetheless it keeps going. And you're right, never mock maybe what you don't know. And I will admit, and this is what this platform is for, us to talk about our successes, but also our setbacks. So I sort of came early to the game on a lot of other things. I think I had a website in 2001. I think I was already pushing myself bigger than needed back in 2001. But then, and I did all the agent going out, for auditions, and it just sort of, I hit a wall. And then after that wall, I gave myself time to relax, but I didn't jump into the YouTube social stuff because I was I was too good for it.
I think about that all the time, because at first, when social media first came about, I hesitated, like a lot of people did. And I feel like the people that hesitated never really had that, never got the followers or the social media vibe that people that were early to the party. It's like, if you're late to the party, people already follow who they're following, and it's just new people are not going to get a ton of followers unless you're on a reality show.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm learning. I'm learning that one of the good things about like stepping into these new arenas is not new, but different from what I'm used to, is you get to define it exactly the way you want. So I could have chit-chatted with you and Covino about 100 different things, but I was like, no, I want to know about Rich's career. And everyone that I've had featured on the channel, we just literally talk about career success, setbacks, perseverance, and that to me is really exciting. I'm with you though. By the way, a couple things you're saying. I know Vine is no longer a thing, but when Vine first started, I was dabbling in it and having fun with it. And I let Covino and our producer Spot mock me enough where I'm like, all right, I won't do it anymore. And I'm like, don't let other people dissuade you from having fun on these stupid apps. Like right now, people love to say, oh, TikTok, oh, that's for teenage girls. It was for teenage girls. Yeah. Now
TikTok is the fastest growing social media. Listen, I can't dance, so I'm not good on TikTok. But to deny that TikTok is a legitimate social media brand is crazy talk. It's growing faster than any other brand.
Yeah, once you see Oprah and Weight Watchers doing a TikTok, it's to be made.
It's you ain't kidding. And everything you're saying, man, is right on.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the early radio days with the Covino and Rich brand, Maxim magazine, or not magazine, but the channel. I want to talk about those early fun days versus like what it's like now when you guys have aged a little bit, you've grown, family men. When you look back, what does that feel like at the beginning, and what does it feel like now?
It's weird, Ronnie, because there's a few things that come to mind. Number one is that our life is sort of, we have almost like a daily documentary of our life if we ever really wanted to go back and analyze our life. It's very strange. Like, we could be old men and be like, hey, you want to listen to a 5-year chunk of your life? Like, it's crazy to think that Covino and I, by doing this from the time we were in our 20s till I'm 40 now. So I've been doing Covino and Rich from 24 to 40. So I could sort of pinpoint when I met my wife.
And he still has a fresh set of hair and no wrinkles. What's going on, Rich?
I'm going to start telling people Covino gets Botox. But it is crazy to be able to look back and see the progression. Now, Covino and I at times had said, well, I don't know if we want to talk about that on the air, or you get nervous sometimes that you don't want to appear like you're aging. That's a thing people worry a little bit about. But then you also have to remember your audience is growing with you, right? And you can't be too worried about like, well, I don't want to appear old. I know radio DJs back in the day that never wanted to talk about being settled down or in relationships because they always wanted to appear like the single guy on the radio. You know what? If you're the married guy or the guy with kids or the family man, you're relating to people in a different way. Like, I remember when Covino had his daughter, he was like, oh man, I'm supposed to be like the single Maxim guy. Now I'm a dad. And we found out very quickly, you relate to a lot more people being a dad as your show's growing than being the single guy. It's the truth.
Plus, that tension builds up, I think. That tension between, and I remember it, like when I was working on the Rick D's radio show, Moving 93.9, this is when he jumped to MS Communications. Yeah. I was a film correspondent, so we would do call-ins. We'd say hello in the studio, and then we hit the streets. And it wasn't a lot of airtime, but it was a decent amount of airtime, 5 days a week. And I remember enjoying it, but I knew my time was sort of, I think after a year and a half or almost 2 years, I knew it was time for me to do something different because I remember getting so aware of my brand that's all I could speak to. And then anything that felt very real, I would like start to say it. And then I just know what that feeling is like. And it's not good. You have to be yourself. You have to grow. You have to evolve. Plus, who wants somebody who's like, older in age, still trying to do the teen thing? Yeah. If you're older and you rock it and represent it, teens will still love you. I mean,
of course. And then you're absolutely right, because it's a matter of owning it and saying, hey, listen, I trust that my audience and the people that I'm relating to are growing with me. And to be honest, if you do a daily talk show and you open yourself up and you're talking about, I'm dating this person, I'm doing this, now I'm engaged, now I'm married, fast forward, I got kids. Those are things other people are going through. If you don't do those things, you almost feel like you're getting left back in life, to the point where, like, if you're not going through the same things that your listeners are going through, they're listening to a guy that's not evolving. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like it's like evolve or not, you know?
And we're not voiceover artists. I mean, we can be, but that's a different career.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was going to say radio, broadcast, the transition into TV. I think you made a stop at SNY in New York also. I remember because I have a photo.
Oh, look at that, man. That's dope.
we covered Covino yet again for Latin Nation at that moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's all broadcast within the worlds of radio and ESPN2. What about like acting and comedy? Was that always something in your world too? And where do you feel like that came and went, or is it still very much alive with you?
You know, it's interesting you would say that, because my interests have always been all over the place for that stuff, right? The TV stuff I thought I would do before radio. Like when I was in college, I thought my better bet would be to be on the news or on ESPN or, you know, being a reporter or something. So I always, in fact, people will tell you, anyone will tell you, look at all the people that are at the top of that game. Seacrest, Tom Bergeron. You mentioned folks like Rick Dees, like guys that have also done some on-air television stuff that are notable people. Television came easier to them. Radio to me is, if you master radio, you could master other things. When I first moved out to LA, I said, you know what, I'm in LA, I got time. I took an improv class. I'm not saying I'm ready to do a one-man show for you, but by doing radio and having the skills doing radio, I felt like the improv class wasn't as challenging as I thought it would be. I think you really have to dedicate yourself to a lot of those other crafts, and it's an insult to the people if you don't. Like, I've done some stand-up comedy, but guess what? I don't have the time or energy or passion to do. Hit the clubs every night and do what those people do to get to that next level. So I have an interest in all that stuff. It just, it's a grind as far as I'm sure you know from friends, you know, that comedy, you know, stand-up, improv, all that stuff, acting, going on auditions is grueling and crazy.
Well, and I want to backtrack to what you're saying and agree, because I also took a couple classes at Improv Olympic back in the day. And it was the same thing. Like, did I ever feel that that's what I was going to do forever? No. I mean, maybe I'll go back and take classes just for fun every blue moon. But the point is, when you're doing one creative passion, it is so valuable to kind of see what else is in the toolbox. And it somehow makes what you're bringing to the table your regular thing. It makes it more interesting. And also, you don't get bored. I mean, that's the thing about it, too. Even if you have the greatest job in the world, like, you know, I would think Sirius XM in your 20s, and Maximus behind you, I think that's a good job for you. But it still is a job that can still get redundant, and that's why those experiences are good. Well, shoot, I hope you land up on an acting or a comedy situation.
Listen, it's I will say now, you know, our schedule's busy, you know, knock on wood, with Sirius XM and ESPN. But when I was just doing Sirius XM, when I first moved out to Los Angeles, I booked a handful of commercials, nothing like national or huge or anything paying tons of cash. But, you know, I booked a few things, and I found that whole set life crazy. Like, you book a commercial for like Hershey, and you're hanging with the same people for 1 or 2 days all day. Then it's like, hey, nice knowing you. See you never. It's a crazy life. And those people, you got to assume they're chasing gigs, and it's a crazy life that I don't know if I have what it takes to do that permanently. Like, you meet people and they're on their hustle, and you got to applaud them. But man, they have to have some willpower to get through that.
That's tough to be sustainable. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to wrap out right here with you, because I do know you got a bunch of stuff going on, but I wanted to ask you, let's do, one could be an athlete and one can be an entertainer. What I want you to do for me, Rich, is think in your head, 2 people, one athlete, one entertainer, you know, be it actor, singer, songwriter, whatever, that inspire you in a way that you appreciate their career, you appreciate their longevity, you appreciate their career reinvention. Do you have anybody in mind?
You know, it's funny when as soon as you said it, my wheels started immediately turning. I'm like, oh, who is my inspiration? Who is doing all this stuff? And believe it or not, sometimes the veterans and legends in the world of entertainment come to mind. Just, you see what they bring to the table, and you see why they got to where they got to, right? It's like the final product. You know, you see some young actor or actress, or you see some musician that's got a couple hot singles out. You don't know where they're going to be down the line. Henry Winkler comes to mind, the Fonz. And I'll tell you why. Because when we first met Henry Winkler years ago, he was so kind to Covino and I. And I'm like, this guy's so kind, and he doesn't need to be kind. I mean, of course, it's nice to be, but he was over the top nice to the point where he invited us to his house, right? We said, we're moving to LA. He goes, why don't you do your first broadcast at my house? And I'm like, the Fonz, Henry Winkler, you know, most recently in Barry, he had a whole rebirth being in Barry. He won awards for that. And all I thought to myself was, he said, you know what life's about? It's about gratitude. It's about gratitude and being nice to other people. And Henry Winkler is one of those guys that I think everyone in Hollywood, no matter who you meet, from the Kardashians to stand-up comics to Guy Fieri in his garage had a picture of him and Henry Winkler. And he's like, yeah, I got to meet the Fonz. Like, he's one of those guys that leaves an impact, and it's all about gratitude and being thankful for what you got. And he's nice to everybody. So that's one guy.
And that's career reinvention. And that's somebody who aged and we went with it. You know, he didn't resist it. And that's why we like him. Yeah, that's a good choice.
And I'm trying to think of anyone else that pops up. You know what? It's people that appear to just work really hard. I don't know if there's truth to the rumors, but you always hear like Will Smith is always like, he's like, I'm thinking of ideas and working hard while other people are sleeping. You know, like people that are relentless, people that work hard but are kind to people along the way. You know, it's I guess I'll throw Will Smith in there as a guy that just, you know, think about it, music, movies, TV. He's tried to cover it all. There's people that do that, and yeah, he comes to mind. He's very likable.
And lastly, with all of your radio broadcast stuff with SiriusXM and also with ESPN2, I imagine you've got to go to a lot of these big events. Like, I mean, I'm not sure World Series, but you've been to like Super Bowl events and NBA All-Star events. What sticks out to you in those experiences as a big takeaway?
That every time I go, my team loses. and my takeaway on a fun note, every time I do go, my team does lose. I'm a Mets fan. I went to the 2015 World Series, went to all the games, you know, took my dad, went with my high school friends. They lost the World Series. I went to both 49ers Super Bowls in the last 10 years. You know, they lost both. So I think I'm not going anymore when my team's in it. But there are times where Covino and I are at a big event, a fight, you know, in Vegas. Like we were just at the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury fight. And I do look at Covino and I say, man, we're pretty blessed to be able to be at these big events, and it's for work. You know, like this is, we're pretty blessed. And I never take it for granted, Ron. I always tell my wife, I say, I never take it for granted. If I ever complain, I want you to slap me because, you know, I work hard, but I'm very thankful. People that are not thankful, it drives me insane because anyone that gets great opportunities and is nice to other people, you got to be thankful and nice to people. That's how I operate.
And last thing, East Coast growing up and LA living now. What's your favorite thing about the East Coast? What's your favorite thing about LA?
Ooh, good question. You know, I was just talking about this with Covino on the radio show the other day. Where would you live if you had the choice? But you had to keep money in mind because both of those places are expensive, right? And I said, I'd probably live on the river down in Texas where my wife is from because I do love like the Austin, New Braunfels area. But I love the people in New York, and I love how you know where you stand with people. Like if someone doesn't like you, you sort of get the vibe. You know, New Yorkers are called rude sometimes. I don't know if it's rude as much as just they're very real. You know, like if someone doesn't vibe with you, like you could get the vibe. Yeah, they don't like me, or they like me. LA, sometimes I feel like you could leave a meeting and be like, man, that was a home run, and you never hear from the person. So I feel like.
I just pitched something at a production that I've worked for a long time, and so I assumed like I had extra credit because I had worked with the production.
Yeah,
and I thought it was the funniest meeting. I was making jokes, and then I never heard.
Yeah, you left
in my mind. I thought we were building something.
You probably called your friends and family like, I got it. And so I don't. That's the only thing, but.
But California's great too. And I only mention it because you more so East Coast growing up, LA living now. I'm a bit opposite where I grew up in Southern California. Not in like LA, more a suburb near Long Beach area, around Palos Verdes area, Torrance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those. So I know a much different LA, but I always like to give both critique but also credit because they're both really cool and they're both very
No doubt. I love the energy of New York. You can't compare to the energy of New York. I feel like you could go to New York. And I say this every time I'm there. I feel like what I get done in one day in New York is what I get done in a month in Los Angeles. I feel like New York, I'm moving around, I'm talking to people, I'm having meetings. I feel like I'm making progress. Like New York is fast-paced. I love the energy. Nothing beats it. I grew up in New York, and I always thought, man, the world revolves around this place. And I was right, because I live in LA, and I realized that every call I'm on, everything from the stock market to businesses closing, and everything is based out of New York. LA, however, people on the East Coast that say they like the changing of the seasons, that's a lie that they've convinced themselves. Like the weather is fantastic here, and people think it's small talk, but it's more than small talk. It's nice living. Like, to be able to, what is it? It's it's April, but the last few months, you can take a walk around the neighborhood, and it's like you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt or maybe a hoodie. I remember being in New York in the winter and hating life. So weather is actually real. Like, it's a factor.
My first New York winter was rough. The other ones, I started to learn how to play that game, whether you get a cuddle buddy or two. I began to learn it, but the first year was really rough, really, really rough, because I had always grew up, in SoCal, and it was just pretty cool. Last thing, Rich Davis, again, Sirius XM, you're doing such a great job, Covino and Rich. And, of course, Now or Never, ESPN2, and / other things I'm sure are going to come in the years ahead. I wanted to ask one last question of all the athletes that are fallen athletes that are no longer with us. If you could interview one athlete that is no longer here, who would you interview and why?
Fallen athletes that are no longer here. First I got to figure out who is no longer here. Who's no longer here?
You can go back as long as you want. It could be one of great.
You know what? Oh man, because I don't want to give a typical answer, but I'm a big baseball guy, so I think, man, no one in football, no one. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'm trying to think of someone that might not realize the impact they had, right? So I'm going to narrow it down for you. Obviously, Muhammad Ali, when he passed, he knew the impact he had. Greatest of all time. He knew. Some people know when they die. Unfortunately, Kobe Bryant, we lost him way too young, but he knew that he was a special guy, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if Babe Ruth knew that he would be considered like Babe Ruth was a man amongst little boys. I wonder if he knew, looking back, like, if you could talk to him now and be like, yo, you played like 100 years ago, yet you're like the guy. Or you could say that about Vince Lombardi in football. Like, you were such a good coach with the Packers, and the Super Bowl trophy is named after you. I mean, I guess my answer would be someone like that I'm not quite sure if they knew their impact. Like, if it wasn't an athlete, someone like a Martin Luther King or an Abe Lincoln, someone that you don't know, like, man, do they know they're on money? Do they know streets are named after them? Like, stuff like that.
Your first comment would be like, let me school you in on how we think of you now. Yeah.
I'm like, do you know there's a school in every city, George Washington, that's named after you? In fact, our nation's capital, hey, Abe Lincoln, look at my money. You're on it. Martin Luther King Jr., every town has a street named after you. Like, I think that's fascinating.
I like your thought process with that. And hey, listen, if you ever want to check into Babe Ruth, all you got to do is go watch The Sandlot, and you could talk to him right there.
I know.
The biggest classic ever. Rich Davis, thank you for your time, man. That's all I need from you today. And
anytime, man. A pleasure catching up with you. It's a shame we had to do this to catch up, but it's great to see you, man.
Appreciate you, dude. Thank you.
All right, thanks, buddy.